All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping into a really fascinating case study. It's all about business strategy, but it's set in a world where the stakes, well, they literally could not be higher. So let's just dive right in. The scenario poses this huge question, really for any entrepreneur. How do you build a business when civilization has collapsed? I mean, talk about a life or death twist, right? It forces us to just throw out the old playbook and rethink everything. What is value? What's a market? How do you even think about growth? So, at the center of this is our case file, a consultant named Danny Dyson. Now, on one hand, he's got this incredible competitive advantage, right? He spent 18 months behind enemy lines, so he knows what he's talking about. But, and this is a huge but, he also has this massive liability. His last name, Dyson, is linked to the very people who kicked off the apocalypse. Talk about a trust issue in a brand new marketplace. And this quote just nails it. The wrong choice, it's not just business failure. In this economy, failure means starvation. So forget about profit margins, forget about shareholder returns. This is purely about survival, which makes every single strategic choice he's about to make absolutely critical. Okay, so to really get a handle on Dyson's dilemma, we have to understand the world he's living in now. This new marketplace is, well, it's brutal. The old world of business, yeah, that's completely gone. It's what we'd call a pure transaction economy. All the old rules are just out the window. Everything, and I mean everything, operates on immediate, tangible value. Think services for food, ammo for supplies. There's no credit, no sending an invoice and waiting 30 days, no venture capital. And you can see how that completely changes the game for a service-based business, right? Especially for a consultant. And here's where it gets really tricky. Look at the characteristics of this new economy. No formal contracts, no credentials to check on LinkedIn. The market is saturated with so-called specialists. And with communication being so dangerous and unreliable, how do you even tell who's the real deal? All of this creates this overwhelming market noise. It's flooded with fakes, making it incredibly hard for a genuine expert like Dyson to cut through and actually prove his worth. So even in all this chaos, Dyson has done his homework. He's a good consultant. He's identified 4 distinct customer segments. And this brings us to his core problem, the classic strategic dilemma we're digging into today. He's got limited resources, so which one of these groups does he focus on? This table lays it all out for us. A really clear, at-a-glance comparison. And you can see the trade-offs immediately. You've got your small scavenging crews over here. Minimal resources, but they make decisions fast. Then all the way on the other end, you have these large settlement councils. They've got substantial resources, but their decision speed is, well, glacial is probably being generous. Every single one of these segments presents a totally different strategic puzzle. All right, so those are the customers. Now let's look at how they translate into 4 fundamentally different business strategies for Dyson. Each path he could take has its own very real risks and, of course, potential rewards. Okay, option 1. This is what we'd call the volume strategy. Think of it like the Walmart or low-cost airline model, but, for the apocalypse. He would target those small scavenging crews, serving a large number of them with quick, affordable advice on their immediate problems. But here's the tension, right? The big trade-off. On one hand, you have a massive addressable market. Tons of these crews desperately need his help. But on the other hand, they have severe resource constraints. They can barely pay. So he runs this very real risk of just getting completely swamped with low-value work that doesn't add up to enough food to survive. And this really forces us to ask a core business question. Can you actually build a sustainable business from customers who are themselves just barely surviving? Is this a viable model, or is he just spreading the scarcity around instead of creating real value for himself? All right, let's look at option 2, the premium strategy. If the last one was Walmart, this is more like a high-end, boutique consulting firm. The idea here is to forget the small-timers and focus only on the well-resourced, mid-size resistant cells. These guys can actually afford to pay for sophisticated, top-tier advice. And the trade-off here is super clear. The upside? Way higher. These clients have superior purchasing power. They could offer reoccurring work. That's the dream. But the barriers to entry are just huge. They already have advisors they're loyal to. And remember, Dyson's last name is a major liability with groups like these. It's a tough nut to crack. So the big question this strategy raises is, does just calling yourself premium actually work? Is that enough to get you in the door in a market where trust is literally the only currency that matters? Is trust earned by charging a lot, or is it earned through shared struggle and getting results on the ground? Option 3 is the go big or go home approach. This is the institutional strategy. Think of it as enterprise sales or even B2G, business to government. He'd ignore the smaller players and aim for huge, long-term contracts with the big settlement councils, doing things like training their guards or designing their security. In sales, they call this elephant hunting, right? You spend all your time trying to land one massive client. And if you get one, you're set for years. But the huge risk is that glacial decision-making we saw in the chart. The bureaucratic red tape, the committees, the waiting. He could literally starve to death waiting for them to sign the contract. And that brings up a really fundamental credibility gap. I mean, can one guy, a consultant with basically zero infrastructure, credibly pitch his services to an entire city? It's a massive question of scale and, just as importantly, perception. And that brings us to option 4, the final path. And this one is maybe the riskiest of all. It's basically the venture capital model. Instead of charging a fee, he'd act as a foundational advisor to brand new, totally unproven survivor groups, essentially investing his time, sweat equity, and betting on their future success. So this is the classic VC play. The upside is that there are no existing loyalties to overcome. He gets in on the ground floor. If one of his startups makes it big, he'll have a deeply loyal partner for life. But the downside is absolutely massive. Just like with startups, the failure rate for these new groups is going to be incredibly high. And in the short term, there's a huge risk they can't pay him at all. So it's the ultimate high-risk, high-reward bet. And it really forces Dyson to ask himself a fundamental question about his own business identity. Is he a visionary investor playing the long game? Or is he a service provider who just needs to figure out how he's going to eat next week? So there you have it. After looking at this brutal market and these 4 very different strategic paths, Dyson is at a crossroads. It's a decision point that really any business leader can relate to, even if the context here is about as extreme as it gets. So what's it going to be? High volume, high value, high risk, or high potential? Each one is a totally different bet on what the future holds. And the choice isn't just about business, it's about survival. So which path would you choose? In this economy, there is zero room for a wrong answer. And that's our explainer for today.